everyone, it's Paige. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be my November wrap-up, which is probably going to be, I guess, the last normal video of the month, because after this there will be a bunch of holiday, winter, end of the year themed videos. So I will be uploading a little bit more frequently this month so that I can be on time for all of those holiday themed videos. And speaking of, I talked a little bit about this in the live stream last week, but I will be having a giveaway, so stay tuned. That video will appear sometime this week. Okay, so without further ado, let's talk about the 4 books that I read in November. They were pretty varied. So the first book that I finished in November was The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian by Sherman Alexie. This was in my back to school TBR because this was one of the books assigned to me for my representation of children in literature class. This was the last book that we read in that class, and this was also by my decision, the subject of my term paper for that class. So I finished this on November 7th, and I absolutely loved it. This is a young adult fiction novel that follows this boy named Junior, who is a Native American. He lives on a Spokane reservation, and he is this budding cartoonist. He loves to draw, and one day he decides that he wants to transfer to this all-white suburban high school named Reardon High School that's outside of the reservation, whose mascot is an Indian. And in doing that, he does face a lot of controversy with the people on his reservation that he's grown up with, and the people, these new white people that he's becoming friends with. So it's very much like a tale of a split identity, his identity as a Native American on the reservation and his identity as a Native American in a white community, I guess you could say, which it kind of reminds me, I guess, of The Hate U Give, and how Star has to move between the two communities of her private school, which is primarily white, and her home, which is primarily African American. Except obviously in this book you're getting more of that history of the Native community and all kinds of stuff, and it's extremely heartwarming and relatable and heartbreaking. Very strange, I would say, because it's very sad, but it's also very funny, and those two extremes happen within the same page sometimes. Sometimes something really sad will happen, and then in the same page it'll be haha, though, it's funny. I highly recommend reading this. I gave it 5 stars because it's really a coming-of-age story that also tries its best to make commentary on the realities of poverty and oppression in the Native community. So, okay, so the next book I finished, weirdly, was an audiobook. I finished The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Arthur Conan Doyle. So I think what spurred that desire to read Sherlock Holmes was the fact that I started reading Truly Devious by Maureen, which is a young adult mystery thriller, and she does make references to those classic mystery, heroes, figures like Sherlock Holmes. Long story short, as I was reading that book, which I still haven't finished, sorry, I just got really in the mood to read some Sherlock Holmes. I've already read some of his short stories, for example, The Speckled Band, I think, and just a couple others during just my life, but I have never read all of his short stories, which I believe is primarily what makes up The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. And yeah, I did that. I finished all of them. The only thing with reading that collection of short stories is that obviously, they kind of start to blur together, so it's hard for me to now distinguish which one was my favorite or something. Apart from A Scandal in Bohemia, obviously I really like that one because it has Irene Adler in it, but I am more so excited to finish A Study in Scarlet and venture into his more lengthy Sherlock Holmes stories. Okay, so the next book that I finished in November was The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I already had a copy of this book because I thrifted it somewhere for really cheap, and I obviously have heard of the book before, so when I saw it cheap I was like, I'm gonna get it. Good thing I did, because then I didn't have to purchase it later. So what happened was I had to design a unit plan around a book of my choosing with a partner. So when it came time for me and my partner to choose a book, I thought, you know, I haven't read The Kite Runner. I've heard great things about it. My professor keeps recommending it, and it is sometimes assigned to upper level high schoolers. So me and my partner were like, yeah, let's do The Kite Runner. You know, why not? It's great. It's fantastic. Some of you might be confused about me saying that because every single update I did on this book on Goodreads was negative. I think at some point I said it was ruining my life or something, or I was in pain. I can't exactly recommend this book to anyone. I can say that if you read this book, your views will maybe be changed and your perspective broadened, but I cannot in good conscience say, yes, read this book, because if I do and you have the same reaction as I did, which was extremely negative, meaning this book very much destroyed my soul, then I would feel bad. I would feel bad having recommended this book to you and then you being in pain. It took me a month or more to finish it because literally it's so painful. It's so soul draining. It's so, it just hurts. It just hurts. Every step of the way, you just feel more pain and more pain. It just escalates. I actually had to put the book down for a long time, so I got to a certain point in the book and I just was feeling so distraught by it that I had to put it down, and I literally did not want to pick it back up, so I left it sit for a couple weeks, and then I finally picked it back up, and still at that point it took me a long time to finish it. Longer than it should have, considering I was supposed to be making a unit plan out of this. I guess for a little bit of a synopsis, this is set in Afghanistan, or it starts there, I think during the 60s, 70s. So kind of right around the time where the Soviet-Afghan war was like about to start. It follows a boy named Amir, who kind of lives in like a wealthier part of the city in a wealthier family in Kabul, Afghanistan. And he grows up with this other boy named Hassan, who is technically his servant, but they're best friends, they're really close, and his dad is really close with Hassan's dad, who's also a servant, so they form this like unit family because Amir's mother has died and Hassan's mother is gone, so they form this really tight-knit family. One thing leads to another, and they are separated at some point due to very painful circumstances. And this book sort of takes you through like that Soviet-Afghan war, takes you to America, it takes you back to Afghanistan, when the Taliban is in power and everything. It's a lot. There's a lot of times covered here, there's a lot of pain. Yeah, yeah, I don't know. But, fun fact, because of this book, I have now learned a lot about the Soviet-Afghan war and the Taliban because I did additional research and I was so uninformed before. I'm still not like an expert, trust me, but I've learned so much, and I'm glad that I have, because I was born in '98, so I was very, very young when 9/11 happened. But I was still alive, and it still has greatly impacted my life. Like, I don't know what life was like before 9/11, and I think it's really important that I understand why my life is so different because of that, and how the US has history with Afghanistan. And yeah, I just was very, very uninformed before this book, which I feel like a lot of Americans are. Not like shaming anybody, it's just I think the reality, because I didn't learn about that stuff in school. Okay, anyway, going on to the last book that I read this month. Very random choice, doesn't align with any of the other books that I read this month, but I just randomly felt like I wanted to pick it up. That is Pan's Labyrinth by Guillermo del Toro and Cornelia Funke. This is the Labyrinth of the Faun, and this is a book based off of the movie that was directed by Guillermo del Toro. Pan's Labyrinth, the movie, is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's beautiful and visually stunning, and the acting is fantastic, the directing's fantastic, the costumes are fantastic. Highly recommend seeing it if you haven't already. It is a classic horror, fantasy horror movie. I got this book, I think maybe the week it came out because I like Pan's Labyrinth so much, but I never read it. I have been keeping this on like my TBR shelf, and finally I looked at it and I was like, I could go for a little bit of dark fantasy, and I could actually even go for rewatching Pan's Labyrinth, so why not read the book? And that's what I did. This book is great because it takes the content of the movie and adds a little bit of backstory in there to explain some things and to add to like the lore of Pan's Labyrinth. There's also fantastic illustrations. This is a book that I would recommend to people who have seen the movie and people who haven't seen the movie. I feel like you could easily read this book and then watch the movie and you wouldn't be like bored or anything. I didn't really know how to rate this though, because I don't know if, you know, if am I rating it based off a book alone? Am I rating it based off of a book adaptation of a movie? Like, I just didn't know how to rate it, because I still feel like the movie is the best experience for this story. But anyway, that was the 4th book that I read in November, and that was the final book. I'm a little bit concerned because I need to read 5 books this month in order to reach 50 books, which was my goal this year. On a good month, I read 4 books, so I'm really hoping that somehow I'll read 5 books by the end of this month. I just don't know if that's gonna happen. Right now I'm kind of trying to scope out my bookshelves and see, you know, what's short and what I think I'll really like. So if you have any suggestions for books that might be a little bit fluffy, because those are always the most entertaining, and books that are short, I would be very curious to hear, because I would really like to meet my goal this year. I have not done so the past 2 years because I've gotten really close. Like, I've done the same thing every year. Like, I've put it at 50, I think, and then I get to like 48 or something. Like, so close. I feel like that's gonna happen this year, but I really hope that it doesn't. Anyway, like I said before, keep an eye out for the video, the second video this week, which will talk about some Christmas things and some giveaway things. That's all that I have for you today. So if you did like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell so you get notifications when I live stream and upload. And I hope you're having a great week. I will see you very soon. Bye!